He chose her. He chose the children. What he didn't choose was the war that came with them. Because sometimes, the people you have to fight for love are your own blood. The knock came early, before the street had fully woken up, before Caleb had done anything except wrap both hands around a mug of tea and stand at her kitchen window in quiet, before her children demanded the world of her. 3 knocks. Controlled but urgent. She opened the door. Zirin stood on her step in yesterday's shirt. There is no version of the armor he wore every time he appeared in her life. Just a man who had clearly not slept. Dark eyes, looking at her like she was the only fixed point in a room that had been spinning. She opened her mouth, but he spoke first. "The question you asked me yesterday?" His voice was low. It was the wrong question. She stared at him. "You asked me if I could leave everything. Walk away from my family, my name, my world." He shook his head. Not dismissively, but the way you shake your head at something you've turned over all night and finally understood. "That wasn't what I couldn't respond to." "Then what was it?" she asked quietly. He looked at her for a moment. Then he said, "Can I come in?" She stepped aside. He didn't sit. He stood in her kitchen and looked at her, and then looked away. At the table, at the window, at the ordinary geometry of the room she had built without him. And something in him that had been held in a very controlled place for a very long time simply stopped being controlled. "I never stopped," he said. She didn't speak. She understood that this was not the moment for questions. This was the moment for staying completely still and letting someone finally say the thing. 6 years. He exhaled slowly. 6 years of waking up and knowing exactly where I'd lost something I had no right to look for. He looked at her then. "You know what the worst part was? It wasn't missing you." He shook his head. "It was not being able to replace you. Not for lack of trying. Not for lack of... There were women, Caleb. Good women who my father approved of and who wanted to be there." His voice dropped. "And I couldn't explain it, and eventually I stopped trying and just..." He stopped. "Performed my life like a man who had everything." She was very still. "I told myself staying away was protecting you," he said. Something tightened in his jaw. "I didn't know you were raising my children alone." "I didn't know." He stopped hard. When he continued, his voice was lower. "I didn't know I had left you to carry the burden alone. And I'm sorry. I know that's not enough. I know sorry doesn't give you back 6 years. But I need you to know that I am. I am so sorry, Caleb." The kitchen was completely silent. She crossed to him slowly. She put her hand against his face. Just her palm, warm against his jaw. And she held it there. The gesture of a woman who had been strong for so long that the act of offering that strength to someone else felt like something new. He closed his eyes. "You're here now," she said quietly. "That's not the part I'm afraid of," he said. She kept her hand where it was. "Then what is it?" she asked. He opened his eyes. And the thing he said next was the thing he had been carrying underneath everything else. "Where do we go?" he said. "That my father cannot reach us." Is the one still against his jaw. He held it there. "I need to go see him." "I know," she said. He stood. He looked at her. At the woman who had left before he woke up 6 years ago, because she understood the cost of staying. "When I come back," he said, "I'm not leaving again." She looked at him steadily. "I know," she said again. And this time it meant something different. And they both felt it. What Zirin couldn't tell Caleb was that he knew that his father must have known about them by now. He is that kind of a man. But he would not add to her fear. He would stay and fight. The Vale estate looked exactly as it always did. Immaculate. Zirin drove through the gates and saw his father in the garden. This was the first thing that was wrong. Aldrich Vale conducted the business of his life from behind desks, and across tables and through the precise geometry of rooms built to give him advantage. He did not stand in gardens. He did not stand anywhere that did not reinforce the architecture of his authority. But there he was, older than Zirin's working image of him, and just a man in a good coat in the morning light, standing among things that grew without his permission. He turned when he heard Zirin's footsteps, but did not look surprised. Zirin stopped in front of him. He did not give the speech he had composed in the car. It had dissolved somewhere on the drive, and what remained was simpler and more absolute. "I know you are already aware of them by now," he said. "But I'm not here to tell you what you already know. I am choosing them. I am choosing her. I'm not here to negotiate, and I'm not asking." Aldrich looked at his son. A long moment passed. "I know," Aldrich said. Zirin waited. Every muscle in his body was calibrated for the next move. The measured, inevitable, quietly devastating response he had been bracing for since he was old enough to understand how his father operated. It did not come. Instead, Aldrich said, "How old are they?" Zirin stared at him. "The children." Something had shifted in his father's voice. Something Zirin did not have a name for because he had never heard it there before. "How old are they, Zirin?" "5," Zirin said. Carefully. The way you answer a question when you're not yet sure what the question actually is. Aldrich absorbed this. His eyes moved somewhere. Not to Zirin, not to the garden. Somewhere interior. Something was happening behind that controlled face that Zirin could not read and had never been equipped to read because it had never been visible before. "I won't stop you," Aldrich said. "But I'd like to meet them." The ground shifted. Zirin had not prepared for this. His father asking, in a voice scraped down to something almost unrecognizable, to meet his grandchildren. He drove back to Calith Street and sat outside for 20 minutes. Then he went in and told her. She said no before he finished the sentence. He didn't argue. He sat across from her and let her have the no and everything that came with it. The 6 years, the calculated erasure of Cale's girlfriend, the pattern she had memorized so thoroughly it lived in her body now like a second immune system. Then he told her the detail he had been holding. "My father is everything, but he's not a hypocrite. I believe he has always been genuine about where he's standing." He looked at her steadily. He asked about them. He left her with that. She didn't call him that evening. She didn't sleep either. 3 days later, she decided to give it a chance. A park. Sunday morning. Calith's conditions. Calith's timeline. Neutral ground where money has no walls to stand behind and power has no room to fill. She had told the children almost nothing, only that they were meeting someone. Moran had looked at her with those eyes, the ones that always knew more than they were told, and had nodded once and asked no questions. Sora had asked 4 questions in rapid succession and accepted none of the answers and moved on. Aldrich was already there when they arrived, sitting on a bench in a good coat, looking at nothing in particular. He had come alone. No assistant, no driver waiting visibly. Just a man on a bench who looked, in the ordinary light of a Sunday morning, like someone's grandfather. Calith's chest tightened at the thought. Sora reached him first. This was not a surprise. Sora reached everything first. She walked up to the bench, looked at him with those direct, unself-conscious eyes, and sat down beside him without being invited. "Do you like pigeons?" she asked. "Because there are a lot of them here, and I think they're following me." Aldrich Vale looked at this child. This small, magnificent, completely unbothered child who had sat down beside a stranger on a bench and opened with a question about pigeons, who had his son's jaw and her mother's eyes, and something in him that had been built over 50 years of discipline and design simply and completely gave way. A softening. A quality of attention that Zirin, watching from a few feet away, had never once seen directed at anything that wasn't strategic. "I think," Aldrich said in a voice that was quieter than his usual voice, "that you may be right. They do seem to be gathering." Sori nodded with complete satisfaction. "I knew it." Moran had come more slowly. He looked at Aldrich. Aldrich looked back. It was the meeting of two people who both understood that the most important things cannot be accelerated. They simply take the time they take. After a long moment, Moran sat down on the other side of the bench. Kalith stood a few feet away and felt something crack open quietly in her chest. She had come here prepared for a threat wearing a grandfather's coat. But she was watching a grandfather fall in love. She should have known the relief was too clean. Peace that arrives that quickly usually means something is moving that you haven't seen yet. It started small. A contract that had been verbally confirmed went cold. No explanation. The contact suddenly unavailable. A reference that had been warm and certain last week was suddenly delayed. Then quietly, carefully, withdrawn. A professional introduction that should have moved forward simply didn't. Kylith sat with each piece separately for 2 days, giving coincidence its fair consideration. Then she laid them all out on her kitchen table in her mind and looked at the shape they were making. And her blood went cold. She knew this pattern. She had learned it from a story about a girl she had never met. A girl whose family lost everything in 4 months without a single traceable cause. She called Zirin. He came immediately. She laid it out without panic, and she watched, in real time, as the conclusion assembled itself in his eyes. She watched him land on his father. He didn't call. He didn't send a message. He went straight to his father. Aldrich's office occupied the top floor of the Vale Group's primary building. He was at his desk when Zirin walked in. He looked up, but did not look surprised. Zirin didn't sit. "I knew you were many things," he started. "But I wouldn't have imagined you as a hypocrite." Aldrich didn't interrupt him. He didn't defend himself yet. He simply listened. "You're moving against Kalith," he continued. "Her contracts. Her professional relationships. The same pattern you used on Kyle's girlfriend 3 years ago." He looked at his father steadily. "I need to know why you acted like you care." Aldrich looked at him for a long moment. "It's not me," he finally responded. "I need more than that." "I understand." Aldrich set down what was in his hands. "I have not made a single call against your woman. I have not asked anyone to." "What happened 3 years ago?" Something moved briefly across his face. "I have no interest in repeating it." "Then who?" The office door opened. Both of them turned. Kyle walked in without knocking, which was itself a statement, because nobody walked into Aldrich Vale's office without knocking. Not ever, not even his sons. He walked in like a man who had been waiting for this specific moment and had decided the formalities were finished. He looked at Zirin, then at Aldrich, then back at Zirin. "I've been expecting you," he said. "Took you longer than I thought." The room recalibrated around those words. Zirin looked at his brother, at the particular composure on his face, the kind that is not calm, but is what you wear when you have made a decision you are not going to apologize for, and understood before anything else was said. "It's you," Zirin said. "Yes," Kale said, simply, cleanly, with the specific steadiness of someone who has rehearsed this admission and found that saying it out loud is easier than he expected because he means it completely. "And I'm not sorry." Aldrich had gone very still behind his desk. Kyle didn't look at him. He looked only at Zirin. And what came out of him then was not a speech. It was 6 years of something true finally being said in a room that contained the right people to hear it. He told Zirin everything. The girl's name, her family, what had been done to them, in the particular Val style that left no fingerprints and required no confrontation, because there was nothing left to confront. I sat at this family's table, Cal said, after what was done to her. I watched everyone absorb it and move forward. I watched Father move forward. I watched you move forward. He stopped. And nobody said her name. Nobody acknowledged that a person, a real person, had been taken apart so this family could keep its clean hands. Now he looked at Aldrich. Briefly. The look of someone delivering something that has been owed for a long time. And now you walk in with yours, and Father is a different man. You want me to sit at the table and watch that? You want me to raise a glass while he treats your woman the way he never treated? He stopped. His composure held, but only just. No, he said. No. The room was completely silent. Zirin did not defend himself. He did not counter. He took every word and let it land fully. Because it was true, and Cal deserved to have the truth of it received without argument. Then he said, "You're right." Cal's eyes shifted slightly. "Everything you just said is true," Zirin said. "What was done to her was wrong. The silence was wrong, and I was part of that silence. I have no defense for it." He looked at his brother. "But I would not let you hurt my woman for it." Kyle looked at him for a long time. Then he looked at his father. One long, direct, years-deep look that contained everything he had said, and everything he hadn't said, and everything that was never going to be fully resolved in a single room on a single afternoon. He picked up his jacket from the chair where he'd set it. He walked out. The door closed. Aldrich sat behind his desk in the silence his son had left behind. He looked older than he had when Zirin walked in. He is a man who has just heard something true said out loud, that he has spent years knowing quietly, and has not had the integrity to acknowledge. He said, without looking up, "Find her." Zirin frowned. "What?" "Cale's girl." Aldrich's voice was very quiet. "Find her. I'll handle the rest." Zirin did not wait to see what his brother decided. He did not wait for resolutions or reconciliations. He had 2 children and a woman he loved, and someone had been quietly dismantling her professional life for weeks, while he had been sitting in parks, watching his father fall in love with his daughter's pigeon commentary. He called his lawyers from the car. He called Calith's 3 most critical professional contacts personally. Not through an assistant, himself, his voice, his name, and told them clearly and without embellishment that there had been unauthorized interference in their relationship with Kylith Rohn, that it was not sanctioned, that it was over, and that his office would be in touch to discuss whatever had been disrupted. He called her family. He arranged for them to be moved, quietly, comfortably, without alarm, to somewhere outside the radius of anything Cale might still be willing to do. He did this without asking Calith first, and he was aware, as he did it, that she was going to have very specific things to say to him about that, and he was prepared to hear all of them. He had his legal team prepare documentation. Formal, binding, the acknowledgement of paternity, the establishment of the twins' legal standing within the Vale family, their names in the relevant documents, their inheritance, their belonging, their right to exist inside the world their blood connected them to. Not as a negotiation, not as a gesture, as a declaration. Permanent and immovable, and not contingent on anyone's approval. He did all of it in 48 hours. When Calith found out the full scope of what he had done, including her family, which she learned about from her mother, who called her sounding perfectly comfortable and mildly delighted by the apartment. She looked at him across her kitchen with an expression he had not yet seen on her. equal parts overwhelmed and exasperated, and something underneath both of those that she was not yet ready to name out loud. "You moved my family," she said. "Temporarily," he said. "You could have told me," she says. "You would have said no to half of it," he says. "I would have said no to most of it." "I know." A beat. "Are they safe?" he asks. She looks at him for a long moment. "Yes," she says quietly. "Then I'll take the telling off," he says. She looked at him for a long moment. This man who had moved the world slightly off its axis in 48 hours, because 2 children and their mother were on it, and he had looked at the board and moved every piece he had. She pressed her lips together. Then she said, "You cannot keep making decisions about my life without—" "You're right. Asking me because I am a person who has been managing my own." "You're completely right. Life for 6 years without." "I know." She stopped. "You keep agreeing with me," she said. "Because you're right," he said. "About all of it. And I'd do it again." The silence between them lasted 3 full seconds. Then she laughed. Really laughed. The kind that arrives without permission, belonging only to the specific combination of this kitchen and this man, and 6 years of impossible things, finally landing somewhere soft. He looked at her laughing, and something in his face did what it always did when she wasn't fully guarded. It opened completely, like a door that had been shut for a very long time, and had finally been left open long enough to stay that way. That evening, Aldrich Vale stood outside a door he had not stood outside in 3 years. He knocked. He had found her through means he did not examine closely, because examining them would require him to acknowledge how much he had also learned about her in the years since, how he had tracked the quiet rebuilding of what he had taken apart, how her family's business had recovered slowly and imperfectly in the way things recover when they have been damaged. He had left them to their own devices. He had not sent help, had not made a call on their behalf, had told himself it was cleaner that way. That involvement would only extend the damage. He had been wrong about that too. She opened the door and looked at him, and her face moved through several things very quickly. Shock, recognition, something that was not quite fear, but was adjacent to it. "Mr. Vale," she said. "I owe you an apology," he said. No preamble. He was 71 years old, and he was done with careful approaches to things that deserved the truth. "What I did to your family was wrong. I knew it was wrong when I did it. I did it anyway because I believed I was protecting something more important." He stopped. "But I was wrong about that too." She looked at him for a very long time. "I won't forgive you," she said. "I don't deserve it, but I needed to do this anyway." He paused. "I'm sorry it took me so long to learn, but a 5-year-old girl just taught me that the things worth protecting are not the ones that look like power. They're the ones that sit beside strangers on benches without being afraid." She did not say anything for a long time. Then she said, "Does Cale know you're here?" "No," he said. She nodded slowly. "You should speak to him," she said. "Not for me. For him. He's been carrying this alone and that." She stopped. "That's also something you could fix, Mr. Vale." He looked at her. "Tell him," she said simply. "Tell him what you just told me. He deserves to hear it more than I do." She called Cale that night. He almost didn't answer. He stared at the name on his phone for 4 full rings. Her name, her number, a contact he had kept without having the right to call. And then he answered because some part of him that had been surviving for 3 years, on nothing but controlled forward motion, had simply run out of reasons not to. "I'm not calling to argue," she said. "I'm calling because I heard what you did, and I understand why, and I want you to know." She stopped, took a breath. "I want you to know that I never forgot what happened to my family. I think about it still. I think you carried it too, and nobody acknowledged that you did. And that was wrong. Silence. Your father came to see me tonight, she said. He said nothing. I think you should talk to him, she said. Not for his sake. For yours. Because you have been angry at the right people for the right reasons, and you've been alone in that anger, and… I'll stop, he said finally. What I've been doing to her. I'll stop. Thank you, she said. She heard him move. Heard the sound of a man standing up, gathering himself, preparing to go somewhere. Kyle, she said. Yeah. I missed you, she said quietly. The you that existed before all of this. I think that version of you is still in there. He didn't respond to that, but he didn't deny it either. Kyle went to his father. Not to fight. Not to deliver the verdict he had been composing for 3 years. He went because a woman who had every reason to let him burn had instead told him that someone should have acknowledged his pain a long time ago. And the acknowledgement, when it came, had arrived from the least expected direction and cracked something open in him that he didn't yet know what to do with. What passed between Kel and his father behind that closed door was private. It was long. It was not simple or resolved in the ways that a wound that deep resolves. But it began. And sometimes, in families like this one, in wounds like this one, beginning is the whole miracle. The week that followed was the quietest of Zyron's adult life. He was at Calith's house more than he was at his residence. Nobody had made a formal declaration about this. He learned how to get Mirren out of bed without an argument about the scientific validity of alarm clocks, the way Sarai needed to be given a task the moment she woke up, or she would immediately begin making decisions about everyone else's morning on their behalf. It was on a Thursday evening that Zyron found himself standing in Kylith's living room after dinner, the children in the bath. He had called his assistant and asked for one thing to be arranged. He was told it would be ready within the hour. He said, "Thank you." He sat down and waited for the children to come out of the bath and for Kylith to come back downstairs. He waited for it the way you wait for the only thing you want. Sunday arrived the way Sunday always did in that house. With light. Zyron was at the stove. This was already a significant undertaking. He had established, over the course of the week, that he was capable of making eggs. The method was still under negotiation. Sora was beside the counter, supervising with the detailed authority of someone who had strong feelings about technique. "You're doing the butter wrong again," she said. "I'm doing the butter the way it was done last time," he said. "Last time was also wrong. You ate them last time." "I ate them to be polite." He turned and looked at her. "You had 2 helpings." She considered this. "I was being very polite." From the table, Moran looked up from his notebook and watched his father and his sister with the quiet, private expression. Calith appeared in the doorway. Soft cream robe. Natural hair loose and undone from sleep. The version of her that only she leaned against the doorframe and took in the scene. The man at her stove who was almost certainly doing the butter wrong again. Her daughter on the footstool providing real-time commentary. Her son at the table watching all of it with those still deep eyes. Something in her chest. Something that had been carefully held in place for 6 years. Simply settled. "He put the butter in wrong again," Sora reported. "I can see that," Kayla said. "Should I take over?" "Give him 1 more minute." Zirin looked up from the stove and found her in the doorway, and his face did the thing it did. The thing she had stopped pretending not to notice. Opened, quietly and completely, like something that had decided it was done protecting itself. She looked back at him. Sora, apparently satisfied that quality control was now being handled at the appropriate level, climbed off the footstool and went to sit with Miran at the table and say something quietly into his ear that made him almost smile. Zirin turned the stove down. wiped his hands. He reached into the pocket of his jeans and turned toward Kyleth. She pushed off the doorframe. Something in his expression made her stop. He crossed the kitchen. He stopped in front of her, and he looked at her in the particular way he had looked at her in a corridor 6 years ago. Before he knew her name, before he knew anything, the look that had started all of this. Except different now. Not the curiosity of a stranger. The full, certain knowledge of a man who has seen someone clearly and is not looking away. He opened his hand. In his palm, a ring. Simple. A band of warm gold with a single stone. Not enormous, not performing anything. Just precise and beautiful, and completely itself. "I am not doing this correctly," he said. "I know that. I should have. There should be more." He stopped. Something in his composure that she had spent 6 years watching cracked fully open. "I wasted 6 years," he said. "I told myself it was to protect you, and it was also just fear. I was afraid of what it would cost me. And so I left you to pay the cost alone. And I cannot." He stopped. His jaw tightened. "I cannot undo that. I'm not going to pretend I can." Sora, from the table, had gone completely silent. Moran had put his pen down. "But I am here now," Zyron said. "I am completely here, and I want to spend every morning getting the butter wrong with you, correcting me. I want to be wherever you are. I want to stop leaving." He looked at her. "So, I'm asking you, in front of our children, because they deserve to hear this too, to let me stay. For good. Completely." The kitchen was absolutely still. Sora had been quiet for approximately 4. Then she said, "We knew you were our dad." Zyron looked at her. Moran said so first, she added helpfully. "He said your eyes were the same as ours. I thought he was being weird, but then I looked, and he was right." She looked at Miran. Moran looked back at her with the expression of someone whose analysis has been publicly confirmed and who is choosing not to say "I told you so" because he is 5 years old and already has more dignity than most adults. Kyleth pressed her free hand against her mouth. Zyron looked at his children, who have been quietly waiting, and he could not speak for a moment. Kyleth looked at him. She thought about a morning 6 years ago when she had stood at a door and made a decision from love, and it had cost her everything, and also, in ways she was only beginning to understand, given her everything. She looked at the ring in his hand. She looked at his face. She reached out and took the ring. Not letting him put it on, not yet. Just holding it in her own palm for a moment, feeling the weight of it. This small gold circle that meant permanent and chosen and no more leaving. Then she held her hand out to him. He looked at her hand, at her face. She said, "Get the butter right from now on, and we have a deal." He laughed, really laughed, and he slid the ring onto her finger with hands that were not entirely steady. From the table, Sora said finally. Miran said nothing. But he was smiling. He pulled Kyleth toward him. She let him. And the kitchen held all 4 of them in the gold of a Sunday morning. Imperfect and unresolved in 100 small ways and absolutely, completely whole. He didn't just come back. He stayed.